and stick to the time limit. Transforming the Trent Valley is a lottery-funded project. It ran, or it's running for 5 years. It's due to end next April. My role finishes in September, so everything we're going to talk about here wraps up by then, which is a bit tight. So it's essentially based around ecology. There are 18 partners. Staffordshire Wildlife Trust is kind of the delivery arm of that project. That's where the funds are directed through and funneled through to get the work done. But then it's a matter of working with a limited number of people at the trust to get the maximum amount of work done. This is the project area. So it runs from the Staffordshire Wildlife Trust headquarters just outside Rugeley, the River Trent as far up as where the Derwent comes in from Derby. It's the River Tame from Tamworth and the River Dove from Roaster to where that meets the Trent. So it's 200 kilometres of river and whatever that equates to in area size. It's a big old task, for which there was a cultural heritage audit performed by consultants in 2017, and this was just focused really on the scheduled monuments and the state that they were in at that time. A number of monuments were identified as being at risk, and those were the ones that at the time the project wanted to focus on. This bit, heritage assets being vulnerable and in decline. We'll see a bit more of that in a bit. It's not a happy lecture. These were the key. You can't really see that very well, but essentially there's a cluster of prehistoric monuments around the north end of the project area. Another cluster towards the centre and the south down towards the Tame, where the Tame is. There's a couple here that are really based around churches, and then industrial heritage around Burton-on-Trent. If you know the area, it's an industrial town. It was divided into two. The first part is the military heritage, which I'm not going to dwell on, but I will skip through the slides because it's of interest. And they go with code name TL, that's transforming landscapes. 04 and 03. 03 is the cultural heritage and everything from prehistoric to industrial. Stop line 5. During World War II, the British Army had been effectively kicked out of Europe. In 1940, the British military at that time divided the country up into a series of stop lines. They were based on natural features that would slow down an enemy attack. Essentially, anywhere a tank could cross a river, be that a bridge, a rail bridge, a road bridge, a ford, or where shallows are meant to be. One of these concrete. Is everybody familiar with pillboxes? Because lots of people aren't. It turns out. I thought everybody knew what one was because they are in the landscape still. Essentially, a concrete bunker that would house 7 men that would effectively slow down enemy advance to allow reinforcements time to appear. So the pillboxes there were 2 parts to the plan. The first part, create condition surveys, visit as many as possible. There are 73 in the project area. Visit as many of those as it's possible to access and assess the condition. And the same is true of the designated and non-designated heritage assets from the wider period. It's the same paperwork essentially. This is the form. We didn't dwell on that, but you can see it's a tick box form, so you can quickly assess the condition of your heritage asset, be it a burial mound, a cross, an ancient cross at a village, or a pillbox. These are pillboxes. We needn't dwell too much on the typology. These are type 24s, the vast majority are. There are others, like this one. No one knows who created rectangular pillboxes or why. It's one of those mysteries that the paperwork has been destroyed from the Second World War. And one of the key things I hadn't realised when I took the job 18 months ago was it's possible to do condition surveys remotely using drones. What it means is you can't access the inside of the pillboxes in this case, but you can check that they're still there, what kind of condition the structure is in, whether it's still standing, whether it's been damaged, that kind of thing. And then the second part of the plan was to repurpose pillboxes. Pillboxes in general, and certainly in our project area, do not have any statutory protection. They can be knocked down, damaged, destroyed, used for whatever. In fact, after the war, the government offered landowners and farmers £5 to get rid of the pillboxes. The farmers took the £5, realised that they were bulletproof, and now didn't. Just took the £5. So the idea was we would create bat vernacular. This is before my time. This was the project when the project was being developed. Bat vernacular, bird hides, walkers' refuges, geocaching, and then interpretation sites. If you've ever been to a pillbox, you will know that walkers' refuges is a really bad idea, as is bird hides, because they get used for all sorts of things. Toilets mostly. So people don't want to spend any time, and they're pretty grim places, to be honest. Most of them, in our area, they'll buy a river and the river floods and it fills up with mud, bits of dead things, rubbish, and generally an unpleasant place to be. This is an interpretation panel. This one's at the National Memorial Arboretum, which is interesting site in itself. It's not really an arboretum, although there are lots of trees there. It is all about memorialisation, and it's in the worst possible place to grow trees. It's on a floodplain in a former gravel quarry that floods regularly. So it was cheap, essentially, is the reason they took it on. They were looking for a place connected to the heart of the National Forest, or connected to the National Forest, and they got this offered to them. Geocaching. If you're familiar with geocaching, if you're not familiar with geocaching, briefly I'll explain it. It's a kind of treasure hunt where you go for a walk using an app on your phone. It takes you to a spot in the landscape somewhere where you can, generally speaking, it's not a box with these. We created these tokens to encourage people into our landscape area to visit some of these sites. And we place some of them by pillboxes. Normally it would be a much smaller box with just a notepad to say that you've been there. And then there were the wildlife conversions. So I joined the project in late September 2021, and in October I was asked to join I was asked to go and be part of Country File as the expert in pillboxes, which I really wasn't. I just had to pretend, and got away with it somehow. So that's us converting pillboxes. In fact, it's a bit of a trick. That one had been converted by the Environment Agency some years before. But what we were able to do was learn from all the mistakes they'd made. The number one mistake they made was to create a slot to allow bats to crawl through. What they've done was made it exactly the size of a snail shell. So the snails crawl in there, get trapped, and block either the bats in or out. So we were able to learn quite quickly to make that letterbox slot broad enough to allow snails in and out. And this is us converting some pillboxes along the Barton Quarry, along the River Trent. We converted 5 in March 22 and another 2, one at Uttoxeter and another along the Trent just north of this site in November 22. Number one, anything to do with wildlife. The number one thing you have to do is keep people away. People and dogs. I've got a dog, I love walking my dog, I love to take my dog everywhere I possibly can, but they don't mix very well with wildlife. So here we put on steel-plated doors straight away, lockable, padlockable. We learned them again from the Environment Agency, who just put a padlock on there, but not put a cover over it. People just broke the padlocks off and go in and carry on using it for whatever they've always used it for. And here you can see where the windows, or loopholes as they're known, are we brick them up and leave one with a slit. The idea is to create a cool, damp environment like a cave, where the bats won't desiccate when they hibernate. If the temperature, if it gets too dry in there, essentially you want to keep it cold and damp, cool and damp. And then this happened. Some of them we left with the loopholes open, and put shelves. You can't see there are some shelves inside a pillbox. There's a blast wall. Essentially, that's so if enemy fire or grenades or something comes in, not all the occupants will be killed by ricochets or explosions at once. It'll, you might be deafened, but you won't be killed immediately. And the blast walls we used. There's a shelf along there that we put into for birds to nest on. They did. In this instance, this bird didn't. This is a tawny owl watching the sunrise, and then this is a barn owl. Again, they used the pillboxes to, I think, just rest up during the daylight hours, but they didn't nest in there. But bats did. I did not expect this to be a particular success because the Environment Agency's work in the early 2000s to the mid 2010s, 2012, something like that, was largely unsuccessful. And that's because they were experimenting. We were able to learn from their experimentation. Excuse me. You can see this is a brown long-eared bat just coming out from behind this panel that we fixed to the internal blast wall that allowed it to hibernate over the winter. We were down there, my wife and I were down there in March of this year, and we saw brown long-eared bats flying by daylight. They'd just come out of hibernation. So when I checked the trail cameras, yeah, this is a real result. And it's meant that what we planned to do was worthwhile. And then we've created a pillbox display that's been on tour for the last 18 months around libraries around Staffordshire and Derbyshire, just to talk about what a pillbox is, what a stop line is, and how we can repurpose those concrete bunkers that have got, in the event, fortunately, they weren't required. But we're trying to give them a new purpose so that they've got meaning for a new generation of people. So they're not just a castle from the past or something like that. They have a function in a modern society as well as protecting them as for the future. So they can't be destroyed so easily. And then the other project, which is really what I guess archaeology students have been more interested in. That's a view of Burton-on-Trent as it looked in 1758, I think it is, from a hill overlooking the river, and then from the east side of Burton-on-Trent. I tried to get up there, excuse me, fairly recently, to take some photographs, but you can't get. I need to go up with a drone above the tree line, so there's a lot of very mature trees on there now. In 1993, Peter Little, who was then the county archaeologist for Leicestershire, had been working on the route of a Roman road that had been identified in the 18th century, was named the Via Divana by somebody in Cambridge University, whose name just eludes me, and it had become a proposal. Nobody really knew whether there was a road. What Peter Little did was identify from field and map work the route of the road that lined up with parish boundaries, old lanes, that kind of thing, and theorised where it might cross the River Trent. In 1998, in the village of Moira, if we just go back one, which is sort of about here, housing development took place, and they managed to find, they knew from Peter Little's work that there was a possibility of a Roman road under where the housing development was going to be. What they managed to find was evidence of that road in very good condition. This is a photograph of mine on the route of the road. Looks like it might well be the agger of a Roman road, but it could be just a farm track. It lines up nicely. I can't swear that that's what it is. And then in March last year, we were able to get a team of retired geologists who have an interest in working with us to do some geophysics work and have an interest in history to go along the side of the Trent and have a look to see what we could see. So we did 2 pseudo sections, one by the river and one in this field. We knew, and you can kind of almost make it out, that in the 1970s this area had been quarried out. And not only had it been quarried out, it's been backfilled with pulverised fuel ash from a local power station. So not only was the archaeology, potential archaeology, possibly gone, it was also poisonous. We left a 30-metre bund along the river to try and prevent poisons leaching into the River Trent. And that meant that they could also come around this area. This here is, this was a salt marsh, an inland salt marsh, a very rare thing. There's only one left in the country, and that's in Staffordshire as well. This salt marsh was destroyed in the 1970s. But the line of the Via Divana Road is somewhere here, according to Liddell. This was the geophysics results. This was the river section, and this was the. At first, we got quite excited because this looks like it might be. This is the low resistivity results, and we thought that might be the course of the fosses that ran alongside the Roman road. But then we realised it was far too wide, and we don't know what it is. But here, we believe this high resistivity area here could be the Roman road. We'd have to dig it to prove it. St Modwen, who own that area, are doing some river restoration work this summer, and they will be taking the river bank back, grading it back. So it may be that we go at that time and have a look to see if we can just find across the road. At the same time, what Liddell noticed from aerial photography was this, what appeared to be a double-ditched enclosure, which he theorised might be a Roman fort that guarded the shallow here that then later the Via Divana crossed over on. So we were able to get permission in September last year to have a weekend where we can train volunteers in the sort of principles of geophysics and just have a great time in the sun. All the photos of volunteers always seem to be that they're sitting down eating. I guess that's true of most archaeological digs, but that's the point at which everybody stops. It's not the fact that they just laze about. We did get some pretty good results. What we found was, if you can see there, kind of double ditch feature that had appeared in the aerial photograph. And what we were quite pleased about was we got just on this very end, if you can make it out there, the return of the fort. So we knew that the fort, one of the returns was here and another one was here. What threw me for a little while was this. I thought that was a very narrow, very long Roman fort. It's actually not. It's not on the right alignment for this. I don't really know what that is at the moment. We'd have to do some proper exploration to find out what that is. But what we think we can say is that that is the probable site of a Roman fort, guarding the river. But what you will notice is, peculiarly, the northwest corner of the fort site, if such it is missing, and that's because the river has moved in the last 2,000 years. So what we know, if we just skip back to that photograph, this is a paleo channel of the river, and that's what the fort seems to align on. And just skip forward to here. This is where so the red line you can just make out here, that's the line or the proposed line of the Via Divana. This is the fort site. And we think that actually the river was there in the Roman period. And if we were going to look for a ford, potentially a ford with lined ford or maybe bridge supports, that's where we'd have to look for it. Originally, the plan was that St Modwen Developments would pay for this paleo channel to be reopened and create a river island here as part of the restoration work, but it didn't get through planning in time for them to be able to do that work during the course of our project. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. It may be that we get the opportunity to put a trial trench in there. The problem is, of course, this area was flooded maybe 2,000 times in the last 2,000 years, if you see what I mean. So it could be that it's just deposited all manner of river detritus on it. And anyway, the course of the river during the 20th century was dredged more or less, not quite annually, but it was dredged, and the alluvial deposits dumped on the riverbank, creating a more canalised river. So it could be that it's very, very deep. At that time, though, encouragingly, in 1977, I think it was, there was a flooding event. A lady was walking a dog along this riverbank just after the riverbank gave way, and she picked up a Bronze Age spearhead and half a spear shaft just lying at the side of the river. What a find. Derbyshire claimed it. It's in Staffordshire, but Derbyshire claimed it, which I'm entirely supportive of. And then we found a few bits and bobs while we were just sort of doing the geophysics work. Greyware. There was another piece of greyware and another piece of what we think is Samian. So it's all that, you know, this doesn't prove a fault. What it does demonstrate is that there was activity during that period in that area. So what's the future of that? Well, we could try and locate the east gate, because that's the only one that's not on the site of a modern farm gate, lost in the river, lost in the woods on the north side. But after we realised that the alignment of the double ditches was wrong and the fort wasn't long and narrow, that it may well be the gate somewhere else. So we don't even know where to begin to look. So that probably won't happen. So therefore, we probably won't bother with any archaeology. Part of my job is that I have to promote. I have a target of sites that I have to promote to Historic England for designation as scheduled monuments, and this is possible. It probably wasn't used, excuse me, for very long during its lifetime. Probably it lasted 10 years or something like that. It was no longer necessary. The Trent stopped being a frontier after a certain period. So it may be that because it's fairly rare, it's worth at least promoting for Historic England to make the decision. Rignell Street is another Roman road, a major one. It ran eventually from Exeter to somewhere in Yorkshire. Templeborough, that's not quite right, but somewhere like that. This section is in Burton, a place called Beans Covert. So it's just a small area of woodland that survived as a game covert from the 19th century. It's completely urbanised around it. And that's what kind of makes this, I think, that little bit special. It's a piece of Roman road that survived everything that time's thrown at it, especially the last couple of hundred years, in a very industrialised town. You can see more or less the curve of the Agger there, and the fosses would have been either side of it. We did some work there in January with the local Friends group, the Friends of Branston. It's in a suburb of Burton called Branston. That photograph doesn't really do it justice, because within about half an hour, 85 locals had turned out, which was too difficult to manage in a way. Luckily, all we wanted them to do was bend over and pull brambles out, which they made a great job of. But I think this is the key bit. We bring communities together, we get them to support the places they care about, but really we give them a sense, or try and engender a sense of ownership of these kind of places, because it's been neglected for 20 years that I know of, and it's just, you know, the trees have all got preservation orders on, but it was full of rhododendron, So the local the local council had all the rhododendron moved out, expecting that wildflowers would move in, but brambles moved in. They just colonised it that swiftly, and it just filled up with brambles. And then when we were pulling the brambles out, we went back in April to do some more root pulling. We were criticised quite significantly on social media by local parish councillors who thought that we were damaging the environmental prospects for birds and birds' nests. We weren't. There were no brambles. We'd done such a good job in January. There was nothing very much to do apart from pull roots. But it's difficult to manage everyone's expectations on anything like this, as I'm sure you're aware. This isn't. It looks great on this screen. I've just put a couple of about Repton Crypt. If you've not been to Repton Crypt, I'm sure Brian will encourage you to go. It's just a fantastic place. It's a 8th century Anglo-Saxon form of baptistry that became the mausoleum of Ethelbald, his son and his grandson. His grandson, Wister, became a saint. He didn't become a king, and the church is named after him. The reason it's here is this is not a photograph. This is a 3D scan that a surveyor who volunteered to come forward and start scanning buildings for us. And what I realised was that we could take condition surveys to the next level, really. It's no longer a tick box. We can actually get a 3-dimensional scan of the building as it currently is, give that to Historic England. While he was there, he took his drone and created a photogrammetric model of, I'm not sure quite model is quite the right word, a model of the building in effect. These are all online. If you contacted me, I'll send you the details where you can have a look at this stuff in future. But I think this is kind of the future of surveying monuments, or one of the futures. We were asked to help out with Cosmic. Have you heard of Cosmic? No, it's a methodology promoted by Historic England. Conservation, scheduled monuments and conservation. The plus bit is it's effectively a questionnaire that goes out to the landowners to see how they propose to use the land, farm the land, whatever, that their monument, their prehistoric monument usually lies beneath. The point isn't, and what happens is a team who have been trained, a team of archaeologists have been trained how to use this model, go to the site and put in a series of trial pits that avoid the archaeology to start with, and that's to assess the depth of the plough soil over the top of the monument, and whether there's a buffer, that kind of thing, between the monument, which is in the subsoil, and the plough soil. Now, then the next phase is to put in trial trenches across that targets the archaeology. And again, the point isn't to do an archaeological dig per se, it's to assess the level of soil and the level of buffer, and once you get down to the archaeology, what kind of condition that's in. You know all this bit already. They can't be replaced. This is where it gets sad. Starts to get sadder. So, Fradley South is a causewayed enclosure. It's currently believed to be the most, there are two, Fradley South and Mavesden Ridware, it's in the Trent Valley, that are the most northerly of these ancient monuments. They are probably the oldest, I think. You could correct me on that, perhaps. They're probably the oldest Neolithic monuments. These, because they're so far north, they date to a little bit later, is my understanding of it. This monument is on its knees. It won't survive another plough. There's a reason for that. It's not that the farmer's deliberately ploughing away into the monument. It's in the Trent Valley. The Trent Valley is well known for its sand and gravel, which is why there are so many quarries there. When it gets desiccated, when the soil dries out, and it gets windy, it just blows away. So the farmer knows he's got a scheduled monument, he knows he can plough to, let's say, 200 millimetres. He sets his plough at 200 mil, and ploughs away, but the soil's disappeared. So he's ploughing into the monument each time. And he doesn't deliberately try and set out to destroy it, but that is the effect of what's happening. And then we were at Catto, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, Aston-on-Trent, which has a cursus, a Neolithic cursus, and then the Witchner site was done separately from transforming the Trent Valley, but I was invited along to go and have a look at it. This here is, we need to look at the barrow that's at the National Memorial Arboretum. Very briefly, it's been, an area was scheduled, so it was protected during the quarry. And when it was handed over to the Memorial Arboretum, they interpreted the scheduling slightly differently to where the area that was scheduled. But anyway, the scheduling was in the wrong place, it seems. So there are three things that don't line up. So ideally, we'd be able to put in a trial trench using the people who use this cosmic method, so that we could see if we can accurately geolocate this monument, so that the people of the NMA don't put any more modern monuments or trees on it. The Catto Ceremonial Complex. If you've not heard of this, join the gang. Neither has, or very few other people have. This is the remains of a cursus, or this is a cursus, the remains of a cursus. It disappears under modern farm buildings, or fairly modern farm buildings. This is not unique, but there are very few of them and getting fewer. This monument is known as the Sunburst Monument. You can see there's an inner henge and then a row of what are assumed to be post hole alignments, although no posts were ever found on them, so the pits in effect. There is now believed to be another henge outside that. This monument is unique, completely unique anywhere. There are no more of them, or none yet discovered. It's utterly unique. This was built slightly later, but not by very much. This is a wood henge monument, similar to the one that's down on the Salisbury Plain. Again, there aren't very many of those. Two, I think two is correct. This is a really sad sight. These are Bronze Age post holes. So this monument, started in the sort of mid Neolithic, carried on in use into the Bronze Age. This, or certainly this bit, and very definitely this bit, was visible in the monument at least 1,500 years after it had been built. This was a thing that lasted. People wanted it to be there for a reason, and that reason is probably the fact that it's the confluence of three rivers. The Tame, the Trent, and then a smaller river, the Meese, come in at that point. Meese is about just a few hundred yards away, 200 metres, I think. But the Trent ran much closer to this area in the past. It's moved over time, so it was closer to the monument. This is a site of utter significance. If it was built in stone, it would rival, the big monuments down south. The fact that it was built in wood and there's almost nothing left, in fact, there's nothing left to see on the ground. Just here is the main A38 now. It's a very busy dual carriageway. I don't know if you know the area. Somewhere here, is a huge Argos warehouse. There's the modern farm building here, and then there's the quarry and railway runs through here. So it's a very busy site. You go on there and it's noisy all the while. It doesn't seem like the place you would cite a really important ceremonial complex in the past. But of course, it was different then. Yeah, we can skip over that if you like. That's just again true. You can see railway, rivers over this side. This is huge gravel quarries. This site here is the site of the Argos warehouse, and then the road runs down here. I put this in just so we can have a look. That's the Sunburst Monument. It was spotted from aerial photography. It wasn't properly excavated until 2005 and again in 2015. So it's relatively recently been discovered. So when we did the trial trenches, this is what we discovered. You can see plough scarring on the top of the monument. So this is the pit
that we uncovered, I say we, I just turned up for the ride. The archaeologists discovered where the Birmingham archaeology had been in 2015, but this is power scarring on the top of the monument. The soil is desiccating away, is blowing away when it becomes desiccated. Again, I've spoken to the farmer, a really nice bloke, very proud of his monuments, but he's also trying to earn a living. It's a very difficult one to balance. This is the Woodhenge style monument in the next field. You can see quite clearly from the aerial photography. And then this one's in slightly better health. These are some of the post holes from the monument. This is part of the cosmic. So there is a buffer of soil. It's very small and getting smaller. It's not in quite such bad condition as the monument next to it. This, I thought this was a special tool, a special archaeological tool. I said, what's that? He said, it's a spoon. It's just a big spoon. You did find bits of bone in there. I don't know if you can see that. Which they were going to send away. I've not seen the report back yet on that. And then we move briefly now up to Aston-on-Trent. This is the Cursus. You can't quite see it. That area there is a Bronze Age barrowman. That's scheduled. The Cursus itself runs down either side. That sits exactly in the middle. The Cursus, in this case, is almost, I think it's 2.5 miles long end to end. You can perhaps just make out the line of it there in the aerial photography in there. But this one, you can see it's a bit better. This is the north side. This is that Bronze Age scheduled monument area, the Barrow Mound area, and you can see there the line of the Cursus disappearing off into the distance. So we were able to go in January. Historic England turned out in great numbers on one of the days. We were running a kind of training, come information event for people who are from Historic England who've not had any experience of cosmic. We also invited and received lots and lots of county archaeologists from lots and lots of Midlands counties. They came out in big numbers for that. What we didn't get was landowners. They're just too busy and not really interested. So what we did was got in a representative of a company that works on behalf of landowners, for him to represent them so he could ask the questions. We videoed all of that, and we're creating a series of training videos which will eventually be hosted on our website. This is the trench across one of the arms of the Cursus. Everybody got really excited when we first put this in. Thought this is the widest Cursus trench that anybody's ever seen. Turns out it's not. It's 3 separate trenches. One's the original Neolithic Cursus ditch. Then to the outside of it is one that was probably dug in the Bronze Age. This is the trench drawing from on the day. So this is the main Cursus ditch. This is a later one, slightly later one, that follows the line of the original Cursus. So clearly it was still visible in the landscape, and then this bit here tags on here, and no one's quite sure if that's another ditch or maybe it's just a tree bowl. We'd need to do a lot more investigation. And finally, Anchor Church. Have you already heard about this? Yeah, great, because this is what I'd like to get involved with, really. This is an engraving from, I think, about 1745, if I remember correctly. So the church is well represented. I can't remember if it comes up on the slide. If it does, I'll skip past it. But it was recognised as a place in the past where all sorts of things happened. And in the burial records from St Wiston's Church, which is in the same parish as Repton, or it was, there's I think it dates to 1638. The fool who lived at Anchor Church was buried, so he appears in the burial record. So it's kind of, that's the first, one of the earliest sort of mentions of Anchor Church as a by name. It's grade 2 listed. It does have ancient roots. It's been used for different purposes over the years, and it now suffers badly from graffiti and vandalism. I suspect that graffiti, because it's a soft sandstone, I suspect that there's been graffiti. In fact, it's obvious when you see the site, because some of it's dated for a very long time. The spray paint graffiti, as you'll see in a few slides time, is very unattractive, and detracts from the monument significantly. So Ed Simons is a professor of archaeology at the Royal Agricultural University. He's a world expert in rock-cut dwellings. He visited this in 2020 and was able to demonstrate its ancient roots, and it's probably 9th century Anglo-Saxon. It's been modified many times over the years by many different people for different purposes. If you've never been, I recommend you visit. Try to go when it's not rainy, because a backwater of the Trent runs just here, right at the foot of the monument itself, and it floods quite badly. Access is difficult at times, so sturdy boots, all the rest of it, you know, if you do and when you go there. This is from the inside. This is looking out across what is now a quarry. And this is a tarmac quarry. There's a great iron bridge across the actual main arm of the Trent that links it to the other site where they take the sand and gravel out. Excuse me. But you can see these probably don't date to the Anglo-Saxon period. This one may do. Now this is what Ed Simons was able to explain to me. I wouldn't recognise that as being Anglo-Saxon. The top part of these windows probably is, but they've been enlarged over time. This is the trial trench that was dug in April, beginning of April, just to see if they could. So it's a listed building, but the outside of it isn't protected. So we're able to go and just do a trial trench. They got down several feet, went down through an 18th century path and found some 14th century remains, but nothing any older than that. What they did manage to find by using a raking light across the inside surfaces of the cave was some crosses that appeared to be, had the potential to be really quite old, carved into the stone. That you can't see easily. This is the problem. This graffiti tagging, litter, fires. It's an ongoing problem, and has been for years, possibly centuries. But this is what I've applied to the local council for planning permission to have this removed. It's expensive. It involves a technique of low pressure, high temperature steam to try and get the paint off. Last week I got approval to have that work done. We've got a limited budget, so it may be that we just have to go as far as we can and then stop. It may be that we only sort of take the surface off. We can't get rid, but we can make it look like it's faded and older, or not so obtrusive. And these are the solutions that I've sort of proposed. So the landowner is the church commission, but everybody's got an interest in it because it's a listed building. This bit, I think, there's always dog walkers there. I think if people know what it is and come to take it, feel a sense of ownership of it, that they will be able to help protect it. That once people realise what it is, they perhaps won't damage it. Who knows? We're going to get the monument cleaned. We're going to install interpretation and information boards so that people can be informed that it is what it is. It's got ancient roots, all the rest of those things, but also those penalties to be faced if you are caught defacing a listed building. And what I'd also like to do is propose that this becomes a scheduled monument to give it that extra bit of protection. I think that's where you come in, isn't it? I don't know if Brian's talked about yet the possibility of being involved in that interpretation and information. Nope, maybe not. Maybe it's just spinning me on a yarn. Cultural heritage then, the future. That's it, it's unwritten. We can do what we want with it. Really what I'd like it to be, what I'd like people to, communities to connect with their own cultural heritage. So they all take that sense of ownership. They all feel it's part of their past. so that it becomes part of their identity as well. It's part of who they are as a community, part of who they are as individuals, so that they come from that place where there's an ancient hermitage, or a crypt that had Saxon kings in it, or the Catome ceremonial complex, which was, it's almost impossible to define how important that places like that are. So once we get that sense of ownership, that we take that on board and we do feel like it's ours, and therefore we'll protect it that little bit more. Thank you very much. Take questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really interesting. Do you have any questions in the room or online? Hey, Rosemary?
I've got so many questions. I enjoyed that so much. It's so interesting to see that landscape, which is where I'm from. And I sort of didn't know any of it, apart from having been to the Anchor Church once. Yeah. So I'm really interested that the Trent Valley, Transforming the Trent Valley logo has a cooling tower on it.
Yes, it does.
I'm really interested in cooling towers, and I'm wondering about whether that's seen as part of the identity of the area, if that's seen as a form of heritage now.
I think we'd have to say, that it is. It's part of that industrial heritage, isn't it, that people remember. So it's not very long since Drakelow Power Station, which is where we talked about the pulverised fuel ash coming across the river being buried. There was I don't know about you, but I used to navigate by where I could see the great clouds that went out to the cooling tower. So there was one at Rugeley, that's gone. There was one at Drakelow, that's gone. The one at Willington, the cooling towers are still there, but it's no longer in use. So I can make out where, and the same at Castle Donington, which is just on the very edge of our area. But just beyond that is Ratcliffe. So all of the Trent Valley was significant in coal-fired power station energy creation. And again, it's all part of that, these were significant mining areas, and the coal went to the power stations to generate the energy for electricity. And that is, so those mining communities remember their past, because it's not very long ago. I was part of it. And it seems like my children, their friends, are now sort of celebrating that mining past. I couldn't get away from it fast enough. But it's become part of their mindset, who they are, where they're from. My dad was a miner, my granddad was a miner, whatever it was. The same with the power stations. Oh, my dad worked there, or my granddad, or my uncle, and they've all got connections with the family to those places, I think.
I'm really shocked about the power station waste being
into the
way.
Yeah. Filled the hole where the gravel come out. Yeah, it was the 1970s we could do it, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, it's not true actually, we couldn't, but it was looked at in a different way. It's got to go somewhere. Yeah, environmentally, it's not a sound practice. If you walk over that field, there's lumps of it, it's lying on the surface of the ground. It's not even being very, very well.
Did you? Thanks for the talk. That was great. Have you? You mentioned the surprise of actually bats going into these pillboxes
yes.
in the landscape, and you had the wildlife cams set up in them. Did you learn anything unexpected about the way the animals used those pillboxes?
Well, something that I didn't know about. I think it's not new knowledge. It was new to me. Was that the brown long-eared bats, when they come out from either hibernation or from their nap during the daytime, they exercise. I thought they'd come into the pillboxes to hunt, but actually they exercise and warm themselves up prior to going out of the pillbox or out of their hibernacular, whatever it might be, wherever that might be, to hunt. They warm up first, and it was great just watching that footage. The problem that arises is that I've taken the trail cams out to get the footage off them. Can't go back in. So I don't have a license to enter a you know, a known bat vernacular. So I now have to find somebody from the Environment Agency to accompany me to go back in, to put the cameras back in to film some more. So it's kind of bittersweet, you know.
A bit of a catch-22.
It is a bit of it, yeah.
I have another bat question.
Okay.
I find that really interesting how you said, you know, you learned from previous, sort of a
Yes.
trial and error process, and,
Yeah.
and kind of a multi-phase project, I suppose.
Over time, yeah,
Yeah.
because when the Environment Agency created the first of their high vernacular, they were kind of making it up. It was sort of on the hoof. They got an idea that really needed to be, you know, a sort of the temperature needed to be maintained. So you close as many of the holes up as you can, leave space for the bats to get in. But again, like I was saying, that they left a space ideal for bats to crawl through, but snails get trapped in there. So it defeated the object, and we were able to learn from that. So it's interesting from that point of view. It is multi-phase. We were able to pick up on the fact that you know, people will smash the padlocks off if they're available or if they're visible. And then we fed that back to the Environment Agency. So when they do their next phase of bat work, they'll know what not to do as well. It's disappointing when you go somewhere and it's been deliberately damaged in that way. One of the sites I visited that the EA had created, the Environment Agency created, was where they'd hung up hessian inside, but somebody set it on fire. If there'd been any bats in that, they would have been killed. I suspect there weren't any because of the other problems that the EA didn't know they created with the slots being too small and that kind of thing. So hopefully, you know, no bats were killed in the process. But it's one of those things that there are so many things to think about. It's not just about creating that space for wildlife, it's about keeping people away from it as well. You know, and that's the difficult bit, because everybody wants to go and enjoy that space and see the bats or see the whatever it is, you know. It's a bit unfortunate that we're a bit destructive when we do things like that.
Oh, sorry, did you have one? No. I was just interested about the Roman road at Walton,
Yeah.
Walton Foot. There's and I just wondered where the river crossing was in relation to the existing bridge, the Bailey Bridge.
It's north, downstream.
Okay.
The track. It's actually on the Walton, Drakelow parish boundary. The parish boundary follows the line of the road at that point. So yeah, and then once it crosses the river, the parish boundaries in Staffordshire, because they're obviously Derbyshire, but it's the Staffordshire boundaries. I think it's Dunstall and Branston. Their parish boundaries follow the alignment of the road as well. So the parishes were laid out a very long time ago, or they were modified a very long time ago, it seems. Yeah, I mean, you'll know there's evidence that parish boundaries, some parishes follow alignments that are laid out in the Bronze Age. You know, these parishes, although it's an ecclesiastical sort of division, the boundary of the village before it became a church parish followed what was there before, and if those parishes or those areas were laid out in the Bronze Age, they tend to stay. I mean, they might get divided up into smaller spaces, but you can find the old, more or less shape of the parish boundary very often right into prehistory. Any more? Excellent. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you so much, Mark. I
Yeah,
really
thank you.
appreciate that. And yeah, so thank you to everyone in the room and online for attending. And one more thanks, Mark. That's
No,
right.